Okay, thus far we've been talking about the cutting edges and sharpening and how to present the tool to the wood. And the other part of being able to control your cuts is not just presentation of the cutting edge, it's how you stand at the lathe. There can be a number of different factors in there to making yourself comfortable and being able to stand up depending on which kind of lathe and which type of stance and holding method you use. But basically it all starts on what kind of surface you're standing on and goes all the way up to what type of lathe and how you bend and move as you're making the cuts. So if you have your lathe set up and your flooring surface figured out so it's something comfortable to stand on and you're still having pains, one thing to consider, the shoes you're wearing. There's all sorts of different ones out there. Flip-flops probably not so good. More support in your ankles and the bottom of your feet can help. Anything to just make it more comfortable so you can stand up for longer periods of time. And some of us, when you start getting a little older, you just have to plan to take breaks and get off your feet for a while. Okay, now if you notice the floor in my shop, I do have concrete. If you have to stand on concrete for more than about 5 minutes, that's too long and that can cause you a lot of pain. Very sore, very unforgiving surface. I have, these are about 3/4 inch thick neoprene mats. Sometimes you can get them at specialty stores, but they take a lot of the pressure out of standing up on your feet for long periods during the day. Now, if you don't have neoprene mats and you have a concrete floor, sometimes you can get away with a couple inches of shavings on the floor. They do offer padding, but the problem is as the shavings build up, then you start getting up higher and higher above the center of your lathe, and then you end up having to bend over and it gets uncomfortable. So alternatives to the shavings on the floor and the rubber mats, they do have interlocking little square things. These are sometimes used for kids' playground areas or for athletic surfaces. They work very nice. They're interlocking. I prefer or would use the solid ones rather than the ones that have a bunch of holes in it for obvious reason, because your shavings are going to go in underneath it and bring it back up higher than you want. Wood floors are nice. If you're on a wood floor with your lathe and it doesn't have concrete underneath it, your lathe might bounce around a little bit, but that can be fixed if you go underneath and shore it up a little bit. Part of being comfortable at the lathe while you're working at it means being able to stand up straight. A good part of this is having a lathe at the proper height. For most of us, that's somewhere around elbow level. I like mine slightly higher. Some people like a little bit lower. All depends on your personal preferences. My particular lathe, I can adjust the legs to raise it up and down. The first lathe I actually had to put a couple 2x4s underneath it just to bring it up to proper height. If you're vertically impaired, or a little bit shorter, or the lathe is too tall, you actually have to build a platform under it. The main thing with a platform, if you remember from my mats down here, you want it big enough so that while you're turning, you're not going to accidentally step off the edge for obvious reasons. But having it at proper height really makes a huge difference on how you feel at the end of the day. How you stand at the lathe, how comfortable you are, and how you move with the tools as you're turning depends a lot on which type of lathe you have. As far as types or styles, there's two basic ones. You have a long bed lathe, which are your more older traditional ones where the headstock is bolted to one end. Then you have short bed lathes. There are a couple of them that are dedicated bowl lathes, have a very short bed so you can stand on the end and turn and pivot with it. And there are also what I would call a hybrid lathe, which has either a pivoting headstock or like this one, which has a sliding headstock. The sliding headstock, you can move it clear down to one end. You have a long bed lathe for turning spindles. Slide it down to this end. You have a short bed lathe for turning bowls. With your pivoting headstocks, generally they're down at one end of the lathe. They're bolted on and they can move 30, 45, or even 90 degrees to the lathe bed. They work. The biggest problem I found with those is if they have one of the extended banjos so it can actually reach out around. It tends to vibrate a little bit. You can get floor standing tool rests like this all the way down to the floor, which are pretty stable and makes those a lot easier to turn with. Okay, the first thing necessary for having good fine tool control is having a good stable base, which is how you stand. Now, if you've ever taken any kind of martial arts, I'll always talk to you about this. The important thing is to be properly balanced above your center of gravity, and when you move, you're way stronger if you're moving with your whole body than you are if you're moving with your arms. Much finer control, much easier to control, much easier to do. So when you're moving with your body, you're going to be shifting front and back, and you also will be doing pivoting to help you follow the curves of the bowl. This will become second nature, and some of you will find out, well, I've been doing that all along. I just never knew exactly what it was that I was doing. So in combination with learning to move your body, shifting your weight, and pivoting, how you hold a tool is very important. Number one is your grip. Best explanation I ever heard of that was an old black and white Hollywood movie, and I can't remember it, but the sword master was teaching the apprentice how to use a sword properly, and one of his comments was, hold the sword like you hold a bird. Hold it too tight, you're going to kill it. You hold it too soft, it's going to fly away. What that means is you don't want the white knuckle grip. If you grip it really tight like that, you're going to wear yourself out very, very quickly. And if you hold it too loosely, if you have a catch, your tool can go flying out of your hand. And I've heard all sorts of stories about things sticking in the ceiling and in walls, not to mention hitting people. So a secure grip, don't crush it, don't hold it so it can fly away. Now for your hand grips on your gouges, personally, I like to choke up on it a little bit, hand on the shaft, and keep this end underneath my forearm. This gives you a long lever, makes it a little bit easier to control for me. You do not want to have the handle out to the side because then you've got a very short lever here. The other method that a lot of people use, they like to drop the handle down by their side, keeps it in close and in control, and it's still the same type of movements with your body. They just like it holding a little bit lower. It just feels more comfortable to me like this way. You have to experiment around on what feels best for you, and once it feels good and comfortable, then it makes your cutting a lot easier. So first step in turning a bowl blank, I want to make this surface fairly flat and smooth. The easiest way to do that is just a straight forward and backward push-pull cut using a scraper on this one. Now if you look at my feet, I'm a little more than a shoulder, or about a shoulder width apart, plus or minus, it depends on where you feel comfortable. And then I'm going to be moving, body movement wise, just shifting to the front foot, shifting to the back, shifting front and back. That's all you're doing. I'm going to have the tool in close to my body, and it's moving back and forth. Okay, right now my tool rest will have my tool just slightly above center, which is fine because I'm going to be angling this down, and by the time it's angled down it'll be at about center. So turn the lathe on, speed up a little bit. I start in the center. Back and forth. Now that I have this surface flat, I want to start rounding this off, and this is where we get into, instead of just a straight forward and backward, you're actually going to be pivoting. Your hips pivot and swirl, move back and forth. That just basically helps you keep your body square to what you're cutting and moving around the corner. So notice my body is moving, my shoulders are pivoting, my hips are pivoting. The more smoothly you can learn to do this, the less bumps and humps you're going to have on your bowl. You want a smooth, continuous curve on this. And it's just that smooth, even movement. Shifting front to back, rotating your hips. So that's got a nice smooth surface there. Oh, one big knot. So now we're going to be doing the same cuts, using the same bowl blank so I don't have to knock the corners off, but how to get it flat across the bottom and then how to come down around the sides. So same thing, body movement. This one I'm just going to be pushing back and forth. Since I am rubbing the bevel here on this cut, this will be a slightly different tool angle. So first rub, Move the handle this way, rubbing the bevel until it just starts to cut. Right there. So keep tool angle and body this angle the same. Come back to the edge, finger behind to anchor it. Start to cut. Gentle push. I came off the wood there a little bit, so I need to move the handle more towards the center line there. And this is all body movement. Forward and backward, from back foot to front foot. And if you notice too, this hand is not on the tool rest, it's on the tool. Mostly just holds it down. That's all you have to do. So I have the bottom flat. Now it's time to make my cuts around this side here. This is a little more finicky than working with the scraper. With the scraper, you're not rubbing the bevel, so you don't have to pay so much attention to tool angle, and that's just sliding along here. But this one, you've got to rub the bevel, and as you go down the side, you start with the bevel here, and you have to move the handle as well as your body. So I will start with the tool in close to my body, rub the bevel, and as I come down, I'm going to be moving my body from front to back, and I'm going to be pivoting my shoulders and hips into the cut. Like that. So, flame on. Rub the bevel, just starting to cut. Finish cut. Again, rubbing the bevel, keeping the tip in there engaged, front to back, and the shoulders move with the bowl, with the shape of the bowl. And again, you notice I'm keeping my hand on the tool shaft, or actually no hand at all. It's one of those tool control things, you can learn how to do it. All your movement comes from moving your body. You steer this way, and your accelerator or your gas pedal is from moving your body into it. Now if you find as you're making the cut that you're running off the wood, that's because you're not moving the handle with your body and with the shape of a bowl. Yep. Get in there. There we go. I have to pull the handle more towards myself into the curve. Now when I'm trying to get the shape of my bowl here, most of the time I'll use the scraper, get my finished shape that I like, and then figure out how smooth the surface is by how consistent thickness of shavings are. So if I start off thin shavings here and thicker here, that means I'll be taking off less here and more here. But if they start getting thick and thin as I'm going through, then that means that my surface is getting bumps and humps in it like that. Learn to have good stable body movement as you do this, keeping the tool in close, rubbing the bevel. So again, the same cut. Rub the bevel till it just starts to cut. Shifting my weight from back foot to front foot. and pivoting my body around so it stays pretty much square to the bowl. Taking about the same width or thickness of shaving off the whole way down. And also flutes rolled on the side. Keep the tool balanced. Again, I keep the flutes on the side, not straight up and down. If you run straight up and down, you run the risk of it getting unbalanced. It will want to dig in, roll with it, big nasty catch, big marks in your bowl. So with real slow speed, if you get too high up on the wing and it gets unbalanced, dig a big hole. Always roll the flutes away from the direction that you cut. Some people say open and close flutes, and I never understood that. I just say roll it away from what you're cutting. No chance of digging in like that. Okay, so again, pay attention to how my body moves. Okay, again, pay attention to how my body moves. Shifting my weight from my front foot to my back foot. My body stays pretty much square to the bowl. And my shoulders are pivoting around. Now this is a pretty small bowl, and if you're doing a big one, you may have to come down part way, stop, shift your feet over a little bit more, and finish the cut. The worst thing that'll happen is you might leave a little tiny mark where you stop and start, but that's generally very small, stands out easily, or cuts out very easily if you make another pass like with a shear scrape or something. We have the outside done, time to move to the inside. Scraping cuts. First thing will be to flatten this out, round over the rim, and then start removing the inside. This will be, again, move forward and backward. As I get to the inside, I will do a little bit more pivoting like this. And I'm going to have to move the tool rest at least once. So fairly straight back and forth first. That's flat. Round over my rim so I don't cut myself. And now start removing the inside. So I will be doing more sweeping or pivoting. And just like when you're turning the outside of the bowl, you steer by pivoting your body. Your gas pedal, or how fast or hard you cut, is by how far you push in or how hard you push in, more of your front to back movement. So that's just all push, no pivoting. Now I'm going to pivot coming back into the transition area a little bit. A little bit easier to make the curve that way. That's pretty much how you remove the inside with a scraper. So again, it's moving back and forth. Some pivoting as you want the arc between the bottom and the transition area to go, to make that curve. I'm doing finish cuts here with the burr. I have the scraper on edge. I would never do a finish cut with it flat. It's going to cut rougher and it can make the bowl vibrate. Steady rest here. And if you watch, I'm still moving with my whole body. pivoting around the hips to make the curve. The smoother you can make those pivoting movements and you're moving forward and backward, the smoother the inside of your bowl is going to be. So, rub the bevel. Starting to cut. I want to make a deeper cut. Pull the handle toward the center. I'm all the way on my front foot now. Shifting to my back foot. And then shifting from front to back here. Again, hand is on the tool shaft, not on the tool rest. The next cut I'm going to show you, this was done by a demonstrator at one of our club meetings. When I first saw it, my first reaction was like, "Ugh." My second reaction was like, that works pretty good. What he did, started to cut, took that hand off, turned around, and just started chatting merrily with everybody in the club as if nothing special was going on. And I'll never forget the guy next to me going, gee, I guess that means you don't have to go like this to turn the inside. All your drive, all your power, acceleration comes from moving your body into it. You don't do it like this. So back to the top, roll it out, just starting to cut. Now it took me a while on turning the insides of the bowls to figure this one out. I got the hang of pivoting to get that curve in there. Then I would stand back here and push with just my arms and not my body to get the inside out. I was having a lot of problems getting it flat across the inside, and that was mostly because I was not doing this, I was doing this. Use your body to control the cut. I take down my little tower there. Go again back to the top, rub the bevel till it just starts to cut. I am holding the gouge out away from my body just so we can see what's going on here with the camera, but cutting. Pivoting with my body. And now to make the bottom flat, I'm just going to move from my back foot to my front foot. Now, if you do want to try this cut with no hand on here, I know that's going to make a lot of you nervous. I recommend it as a practice exercise. And if you're very nervous about it, don't do it at all. Or turn your lathe speed way down and try it, and you can feel how it's like, how much easier it is to control that way as opposed to doing both hands where you're pushing like that. It just makes tool control so much easier. It doesn't take a lot of pressure. You can rest your hand very gently on the tool shaft, that helps. You can take the hand completely off. It's a training exercise, be careful with it. But that gets that idea through of moving just with your body and not with your arms. One more pass, I think. Notice how far over my body is this way on my front leg. Pivoting. And now moving straight across. far I've been talking about turning bowls from the end of the lathe where you can stand up straight and be right in front of your work. This also works if you're turning outboard off the back end of the lathe, or if you have one of the lathes where the headstock pivots where you can stand up straight to it. I did take a workshop with Alan and Stuart Batty. I've mentioned that before in a film. And the thing I thought was really strange about Stuart's style, I just couldn't figure it out. And it was one of those things I had to think about for 6 months or so, and it finally dawned on me that, I bet he learned to turn on a long bed lathe, and when you're turning on a long bed lathe, you can't lean over to get to the inside using the same handle up close and body pivoting methods that you can when you have a short bed lathe. And so this is kind of an adaptation, or how you adjust your style. So you're still standing up straight and not bending over. If you bend over for very long, your back's going to really hurt. Now, before I start turning this one, I have a little flaw in the wood, and I want to show a close-up of that. Main thing with this, when you have any kind of flaw at all, you turn really slowly, very carefully, until it is gone, totally turned out. So now for roughing this bowl blank, as I'm on a long bed lathe, the roughing is pretty easy. Pull back and forth. I'll show a little bit with a gouge here. This is one of the swept back grinds. Again, I'm moving with my body. I'm not moving with my arms. And this does have that little flaw in it. I'm going to nibble the end off here first, get rid of that. At this point, I'm still able to keep the tool in close to my body. I don't have to reach out. I'm going to switch over to a scraper here. Same basic cuts. Same as I do when I'm turning a regular bowl. Turning from the short end of the lathe. I'll check and make sure that crack is totally turned out. Not quite. Up into here a little bit, so I'm going to take more off the bottom. See what that looks like. Still a little bit of the crack there. I don't know how deep that one's going to go, but I may end up leaving some of that in there just for demonstration purposes. That looks like that's probably just color stain there, so I have it roughed out. Now I need to make smooth finish cuts. Going across the bottom's pretty easy. Same basic bevel rub. I am standing here. I can push, no problem. Rub the bevel, move the handle that way till it just starts to cut. Come back to the edge. And now it's time for the finish cut down the outside. Now this is a part where it gets different. I can't lean way out here like this to rub the bevel to make the cut. That's just too much effort. Two different ways you can do it. One of them, this is called a pull cut. Stand here, roll the flutes over till it just starts to cut. Make a pull cut this way. Adjust my tool rest so it fits a little better. This allows you to stand fairly straight up and down still. Roll it, just starts to cut. I am rubbing the bevel here. That's one way to do it. The other way, if you want to hold your handle more level, you actually have to extend your arms out. It's still the same, rub the bevel and move with your body, but you're just doing it while holding it out. The main thing is you're not going to be bending over like that, way over the bed of the lathe. I'm not really good at this cut. I'm not really good at this cut. It does work. If I practice it a lot, I could get better at it. But I learned on a short bed lathe and never really learned this cut. The body, arms stay about stable, and the body moves and pulls like this. If I practice this a lot, I could be a lot better at it. It does work, but I have a short bed lathe, so I never really learned it. So, making a recess, plunge cut, and ready to reverse. Wiggle it around, make sure it's fairly flat on there. Snug, snug. Usually go around a couple of times. It does look like that crack is totally gone. There's a little bit of mineral stain on the back of it. So now for turning out the inside, if you're using a scraper, it's still pretty much the same basic movements this way. Pretty simple. Back and forth. Even up the surface, round over the rim so you don't slice yourself. And then it's just push and pull. Now, if you're going to use your gouge, it gets to be slightly different. And this is again because I would have to lean clear out here to get the cut and push in. I can make cuts from here. This is pretty easy with my body. But if you notice, I'm holding the tool out farther from my body rather than in close. I can hold it in close by the time I get towards the center. And now I'm holding it clear out here. You can look at this type of roughing out too as every cut is a practice cut. I used to leave it real ragged in the center. I got to the point where I figured out that actually it works better if you try to make it smooth and even. Good practice. So here, rub the bevel. And when it gets to this point, I can put it in close to my body. Again, I have to hold it out farther away from my body to make that cut. I'm still pivoting with my body, so I'm holding the tool out further. Take my little cone in the center out. Back to the basic, holding it in close to my body. I can do this going across the bottom, I just can't do it going down the sides. Body, whole body moves. Thickness feels pretty good. I'm going to come back up into here, take one more finish cut across the bottom. I have to hold it out just because I don't want to lean over that far. Into my body and push. Yeah, one more cut. So it's the same basic ideas. If you don't want to bend over, you have to hold the tool out from you a little bit. Takes a little bit of practice. It's workable. Do check out Stuart Batty's videos on that. He does it a lot better than I do.